Hey guys, welcome to Celia's Playlists. Today I'm here with Courtney Fleming, who is an acoustic singer-songwriter from right here on Long Island. I'm really excited to have Courtney here because we've actually met in person before. How's it going, Courtney?
It's good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm having a fun conversation day, like with all of these interviews, so I'm really excited to see what we get into. So, Courtney, before we start up with everything, tell me a little bit about you and I guess the kind of music that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, I'm a acoustic singer-songwriter. So I started playing guitar when I was around 10, got into songwriting around 15-ish, and then I was kind of inspired by, it's a little eclectic. I was inspired by, when I was growing up, I was really into like hard rock bands and things like that. But I'd also been really into acoustic guys like James Taylor, Coffee House stuff like Nick Drake. So basically, like with what I do, a lot of times, depending on the song, it's either like um, a finger picked uh, acoustic song where the real focus is the storytelling behind it, and it's very like kind of in the Nick Drake-ish vein. And a lot of people relate it to like some of my favorite songwriters like Damian Rice and Glenn Handred. So I try to mix a lot of the progressions you see more in that into the acoustic thing. So it's that's really sort of what I do. Um, and then I'd gone to school for classical guitar and a concentration in composition. So I did that so I could come up with like piano parts and string parts I could have put into the music and kind of make it a little bit bigger when I recorded the album over at the studio.
That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. So I I kind of took all three of those things that I'm really influenced by and put them together, and I'm got three songs out for an album that I have coming out. That's got 8 songs total plus two more singles I just recently recorded. That'll come out after that.
Oh
So
hell yeah. That's really cool because I feel like you are in an interesting space and for the audience, you came in for one of my photo shoots and it was one
yeah,
where I had you bring records, like, records that meant something to you. Do you remember what records you brought? Cuz I remember it wasn't like which ones did you bring?
yeah. Literally only one of the records I brought would I say is in the style that I do.
Okay. Yeah,
So
but it's all about influences. So
right,
so what did
yeah,
you bring?
yeah. So the style. So I brought in. It's funny actually now that you bring it up. So I brought in the Civil
I
Wars.
was going to say that's the one I remember.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely in like my genre. And then the stuff I brought in that definitely does play an influence. You're right, actually. One of the other albums I brought in was a Muddy Waters album because like vocally I like to sing sort of like the Delta Blues guys. I like the rasp and stuff like that. So I have that, and then we also have one that I love the genre. I don't play it. I wish I could. I'm really into post rock also, so I had an Explosions in the Sky album too. I had a very. You're right. It was a really weird, like eclectic kind of mix of vinyls.
But it
For
was really
too.
cool. I actually am a big fan of the Civil Wars, and I don't think that they got
Mhm.
enough credit for like what they did at the time that they did it. And I really like it because they have such a push and pull dynamic in their harmonies.
Yeah,
So like that's something that I like to throw on in the car, and I like to sing along too.
yeah. I'm a huge fan. I was a huge fan of their stuff, and you're right. They didn't really. They got a little overlooked because they came out around the same time that like Mumford and Sons had dropped their first album, and I'm a big Head and the Heart guy. But when Head and the Heart first came out, yeah, so like they kind of uh, they got a little overshadowed by that because Head and the Heart they were more like your typical old school like this is like
Like
a folk band as opposed to like Mumford and Sons, which is like a poppy rock folk type of feel. So they had some
I
influence
feel
that I
that.
would say, you know what I mean? Like so, I think Civil Wars I gotten a little overlooked because they were like this real like acoustic duo, and Mumford and Sons had kind of a bigger poppy sound at the same time. I think so. I think you're right. When they came out, there was a couple of groups that had come out in that style, and anyone, yeah, I think they got a little overlooked just because of that, probably.
Definitely, definitely. But that kind of like rolls us over more towards your style because I feel like you incorporate a lot of like specifically acoustic guitar into what I have heard you play, and and that's also what you do professionally. You essentially it's you and a guitar showing up at places like Ohika Castle, which for those that aren't on Long Island, that's a very fancy venue that is both what would you say, like it's they have the restaurant and stuff there, but then they also do large scale events, and they also filmed a Taylor Swift music video there.
Yeah, yeah. So it's considered like one of the historic landmarks of Long Island. So they do a lot of weddings there. Um, they do a ton of weddings there. They've had a couple music videos done there.
It's
They have,
very like Great Gatsby coded, right? It
yeah.
feels very
Oh,
Great Gatsby, like think Great
yeah.
Gatsby. So you play at the Great Gatsby place basically.
Yeah, yeah. I'm there. I'm there every Saturday, 7 to 9:30 usually. So I
Are you a full-time musician?
I am. Yeah, yeah. So I gig regularly, and then I also have a few clients that I teach as well. So I'd started performing when I was about 18 until I eventually worked my way into like paid work performing when I was around 25 or 24. And then I've also been teaching since I was about 20. So I do a
Very cool.
mix of that. Yeah, yeah. I was teaching to little music stores for a while, then went out teaching for myself. I had the opportunity to teach as an adjunct professor at Nassau Community College in 2019, so that was cool. And then I've taught at like a troubled youth high school in 2021, and yeah, so yeah, I've been a full time musician for a while now. I really enjoy it, and yeah, you're right. Like I'll if I'm doing like, and it's funny, like I'll have times where I'm doing like original music with like maybe a drummer and a bassist at the Brooklyn Music Kitchen or at some other venue in the city. And then on Long Island, a lot of times I'll do like the acoustic guitar singer songwriter by myself thing, where it's like at Ohika, it's a mix of like covers and originals a lot. And people don't know I'm throwing originals in. It's something I like to do when I'm at like a cover. I'll throw in an original, just see how the crowd reacts. I'm like, okay, so this one I'll keep, or I'll play it and be like, no one really reacted. I guess this one's just for me. And then, you know,
I always love when people do that because I feel like it's like a listening room that you it's not actually a listening room. And for people that don't know what a listening room is, it's like somewhere that like would you do you know what a listening room is?
um, possibly. I assume.
So it, it's something along the lines of like people come and they're there to listen to the music. Like
Right.
that is the intention. And that's kind of what you get by proxy by doing these singer-songwriter gigs, right? Like
Mhm.
you're able to kind of test kind of like if a song is hitting or not, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the advantages. So like I could go like so I guess like I don't know if it was April or March, but my buddy Greg had been playing drums for me at that point, and we had played a gig in Brooklyn Music Kitchen where people were there specifically to listen to the music. So we played a bunch of originals, and everyone was really listening. It was great. And but you're right. What I like to do when I go to like Okiki Castle, or if I'm playing it like when I played at Williston's or when I played at like the Links upstate last Thursday, like for me, it's because it's not a place where people are specifically there for the music. They're there for kind of the ambiance. I'm able to throw in some originals, and if that suddenly gets a bunch of applause and people are really hyper focused, then I know like okay, so this new song, I can definitely like this is one to record. Whereas sometimes I'll do it and I'll be like, all right, well let's see how this one comes out. So yeah, it definitely doing the whole, and I think it's nice to be able to do both because I also feel like a lot of people don't realize like you learn a lot from doing covers. I know some people who they only do covers, and I know some people who only do originals. And I think it's cool to do both because I put my own spin on the covers I do, and then if I throw in an original and people react similarly in a positive way, then I know like okay, this one's one that's going on the next EP or the next album.
I love that because I am a big fan of covers. I am someone that, especially in my playlisting, I would rather, not rather, but like, there's some songs that I have like these amazing covers that people have done, and I'm able to put those on the playlists. And that's like a way that people are able to find that artist that's not just being like, here's a song of theirs. that you
Yeah,
don't know, because covers, people don't realize there's a built-in audience.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I love that you're taking them and that you're making them your own, which kind of is a segue into I want to talk a little bit about your writing style.
Sure.
I know you have this background in classical guitar, and I also know that you just went to like Ireland for like for guitar. So I want to hear a little bit about your writing process, because you seem to be putting effort in obviously like growing and continuing to learn, because you're going to things like your Ireland trip, which you can plug now if you'd like.
Yeah, no, no, it was Scotland. It was Scotland, but
Scotland. I was close.
you were close. Yeah, no, yeah, it was. Yeah, you're right. So a big thing for me is like, I feel like you should try to, um, kind of push what you're doing, continually learn. So for me, like, the funny thing is when I went to school for music performance and like classical guitar, it was not because I had any interest in classical guitar originally. It was
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to guys like Josh Ritter, who's an acoustic singer songwriter, and he does a lot of like 1/4 progressions, so just like C F C F C F,
Mm-hmm.
right, strumming. And I was listening to guys like Iron and Wine, and he'll do a ton of fingerpick stuff, or Gregory Alan Isakov, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I was kind of like, all right, well, I kind of want to get like the best of both worlds there, and I think I can improve on my technical skill. So I'll go to school for classical guitar and I'll throw that in. And it's kind of funny the way it all expanded, where like the first thing I did, again, like testing stuff with the audience type of thing, or testing stuff with strangers, was something that I kind of did early on. So I didn't know if I was going to go for voice or for guitar. So I played a couple open mics and I would listen to what the audience said, and a lot of guys were like commenting they really liked my voice and they thought the guitar was pretty good. But I would hear people be like, "Yeah, man, I wish I could sing do a little more on guitar." So I was like, "Okay, so I guess I'll go for guitar." So I went into my
Mm-hmm.
music program, did guitar, and then as time progressed, essentially went to Adelphi University after, and was like, "Well, I kind of want to learn how to take certain ideas from classical music, like retrogrades and different compositional techniques,
Cool.
and throw that into my music and learn how to compose for strings or piano." So I wrote a couple string piano trios in college, and
That's
I really fell in love with. I'm sorry, no, I was gonna say I really fell in love with classical guitar. So then I wanted to expand on that and was thinking about going for my master's. And my favorite classical guitarist was having a retreat in Scotland. He's does a retreat in Scotland every year for like the last 11 years or so. And he had another guitarist that I really like. Um, so that was Matthew McAllister. And then he had a guitarist I really like named Matthew Cochran, who was going to be one of the people there as well. So I went on this international guitar retreat where it was like me. It's funny you mentioned Ireland. I met a couple people from Ireland. I met people from Scotland, from Germany. And we spent about a week like um, doing technique classes, having individualized lessons, doing performances, being parts of ensembles. It was really, really, it was an amazing experience in general.
That's awesome. And like I love that you were able to I love that it was international. That's the cool part. Like not that you couldn't go do this in New York City, but it also gave you like an experience that you were able to have in addition to just like, the things that you did learn.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like there were people from all over the world who came. So I made a, friends with people who were from like Germany and Finland, and then Scotland, obviously, and then people who would come over from Ireland, and me and a few other like Americans, and we all had like it was a really nice time. It was cool to be around like people who had similar mindsets for music and also loved classical guitar. So I was able to go over there and relate to people about like my favorite classical guitar composers, or also just like my favorite composers in general. So it was a really, really cool experience in general. And they had a bunch of concerts that were awesome too. So almost every day we had a concert with another, like, where there was like an amazing um, classical guitarist who would play. There was like a guitar violin duo. There was a guitar, a bunch of single guitar concerts, and then McAllister and Cochran had done a full run through of their new album called Pale Blue Dot, which was pieces that Cochran composed based off the Carl Sagan book, and then they did arrangement of the Interstellar Suite for classical guitar. So it was cool to watch that be performed as well.
That's really awesome. I'm glad that you had such a good experience. I would love to hear us now knowing like some of your history, some of what you do. I want to hear a little bit about your writing style because I know that you're someone that lyrics is important to, and obviously like you've put a lot of time and I guess to like learn all of these different things about composition and guitar. So tell me a little bit about your writing process.
Yeah, I mean, my writing process. So it's changed. That's the funny thing too. That's changed over time. I think that's something
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes other songwriters, when I talk to them, they're struggling. They kind of, it doesn't occur to them that that can change over time as they do it. It doesn't have to remain the same the way that it's handled. So my writing style, like for me, the lyrics are the most important part. I kind of always view the difference, and it's just like my personal opinion. I've always viewed the difference between like a composition and a song is that a composition, you're really trying to go from a starting point and see just how far you can take it before you have to return to home, sort of in a way. So with songwriting, though, I've always viewed it that, and it's funny, the way I think of it is more that I think of songs as more as these condensed, almost like movies or books,
I love that.
right? That's how I think of it. So when I write a song, I don't actually think of a song. I think of like I'm trying to get a certain message or a story across, and it kind of shows up kind of evident in my writing, I think, because even though people don't know that's how like I go about the process for it, I've had a bunch of friends and colleagues and just people who listen to my music comment on like on the fact that they can they kind of hear it sort of like a story, and I think what they don't realize is that that also comes out in my writing in the musical aspects. I do a lot of something called staggered entrances. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, like a staggered entrance, like when I was in school for classrooms, we went over staggered entrances, which is essentially like when you think of like a lot of if you think of a lot of music that was done, let's say songs that were done in the 60s or 70s or in the 80s, a lot of times all the instruments kicked in at once, right? The song would start and you had your drums, your bass, your vocal, piano. It's all starting all at once. You can think of it that way. A staggered entrance is sort of the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a staggered entrance, you're playing, maybe you have guitar coming in, and then a good example would be like if you're familiar with, let's say like Phoebe Bridgers or CC Coakley, anybody like
Mm-hmm.
that, they have songs where maybe for a whole minute you're just hearing them with guitar, and then all of a sudden the rest of the band comes in, right? So that would be like a staggered entrance for the band, and where my view on songwriting kind of comes out, where it's a little too, in some ways, it might be a little too on the nose. That that's how I never really thought of it, but it might be a little too on the nose in the fact that like I view songs as a story where like you have like your intro and your exposition and your conclusion is that I tend to have, for me, I have instruments come in at specific points and usually at changing points in the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
So usually my songs will always start with 8 16 bars of guitar intro, bass and drums hit at the same time. They come in the pre-chorus or the chorus. All of a sudden, there's a piano line and one string line, and then everything fades out before we do a re-intro into the verse, and then that stuff comes in, and then maybe there's a second string line. So for me, like I let the lyrics dictate, which is just a different way people do things. Some people really let the music dictate the lyrics. I let the lyrics dictate the changes happening in the music, where it should be in support of what the lyrics are doing, as far as I'm concerned. So,
That's
I,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. To me, I view it more like if you think of it as sort of like the way I always view it. I think of it kind of like if you're thinking of building like a house, sort of. The original music is like the foundation for the building, and then as you're telling the story, you're sort of getting an idea of how the rooms are structured and what's going on in that actual area. So,
It's kind of like adding the layers. You know what I mean?
mhm.
It's like it's starting with the story, but then it's building the atmosphere and building like the world of the story via sound. That's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that you're using the sound and also the instruments and their placement to make the story more cohesive and come out a little clearer, I would say. So, um, and that's the other thing too. Like you'll notice sometimes like people just add another instrument to have something new come in. If I'm adding an instrument, it's actually because I feel like there should be it's indicating some type of change in the story or purpose to it. So that's sort of for me like where that should come in. I tend to think less is more also. So in my songwriting, a lot of times there's something called like an ostinato, or it's really like this repetitive, continuous melody, and then things are building around it to create the atmosphere for it.
That's really awesome. I I think that that's a like such a cool way to think of music because that's kind of like what I do with music videos. I look for all of the details and I make sure that they're all there and the story's all there and it really is kind of like how you build a great story. You know what I mean? And storytelling is like the basis of like I would say like folk music and certain
Yeah.
kind of music in general. So it's cool to hear how you explain it because it's I don't know it's the whole thing. Like you're not gonna listen to a song because it doesn't like have something cohesive and that's either a story style or it's an instrumental that leads you through. So it's cool to hear your kind of thought process on that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about it. Like the whole point of music is to make you feel something. So I used to sometimes I'd have like little intense or annoying like debates sometimes when I was in school doing my bachelor's, because sometimes people get so wrapped up in is the music interesting, meaning like is it complex, that they'll actually they would kind of insult. I've seen this the other way around too, but they'll almost like insult like uh, popular forms of music that are like story based. And for me, it's like music's supposed to make you feel something. So if I hear a simple song or a simple composition that really makes me feel something, I'm more likely to lean into that than I am into something that is from a music theory standpoint more interesting, and maybe it's atonal and I can't relate to it at all. Right. So like even in compositions, like one of my favorite pieces is like On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter. And that's like this post minimalist piece used in like the movie like Arrival and things like that. And that music makes me feel a lot more than anything I've heard by like Schoenberg or whatever. And meanwhile, the same thing for me, I was always more attracted to the singer songwriter style. I was more attracted to like the Damien Rice and the Bright Eyes and stuff like that, as opposed to um, like a lot of my friends who were into like metal, like they were into like Cannibal Corpse and stuff like that. Like I was never into that stuff. I was more into stuff that was more lyric based. So
Very cool.
yeah, yeah. And for me, like the music should work in tandem. So like my first single sale was really sort of about like two people who like they really care for each other, but they kind of they want different things out of life, right? And it doesn't mean that like it was sort of like this melancholic, like broken hearted love song. I don't really know where it came from because I wasn't seeing anyone at the time, but I wrote this song about you had two people, one who was more free spirit and one who's sort of a little more they need safety and security, and they have to kind of part ways. And in the song, what was really nice was in the studio we had my friend Amaya come in and sing it. She went to school for music with me as well, and we had her come in and sing it. And the song is sort of like the one character is reminiscing on the relationship of how like kind of should have seen it coming, and they wish each other the best, but like they're not gonna be able to make it work. And because it's like a reminiscing, sort of like remembering type of thing, there's certain moments where me and the engineer had spoken, and we decided there were moments where like we would bring Amaya's voice slightly above mine. So there'd be like a line where, you know, I remember when you said, and then she comes in singing, and then as a result, when we're doing the duet, her voice is a little higher than mine in one section, and then another section it comes down. So I think it's interesting how you can play with even the way the sound is done and just the way you structure a song to really help create more of a clear picture for the audience, you know.
I feel that. I feel that. So, so
Yes.
I am going to ask you now the question that I ask everyone on this show because I
Sure.
we're getting up to time, and I
Yeah.
it's really cool to hear the kind of way that I like the way that you think. It's a cool way to like think about music, and I'm glad because I'm able to relate to that from a storytelling perspective as someone that works in visuals. But the question I ask everyone is, if you had one piece of advice for someone starting out in music now, what would that piece of advice be? However you want to take it.
If I had one piece of advice, I mean, there's a lot of them, but I guess so. The obvious ones I'm going to skip over, like practice, know your craft, and put yourself out
Mm-hmm.
there. The one piece of advice I guess I really would say to people is keep in mind what your intention is
Mm-hmm.
with it. So something that's helpful for me is I'd say what you want to do. I would encourage people that if they're going out and they're playing like their own music, to
Mm-hmm.
not go into it um, with the wrong mindset where it's constantly comparing yourself to others or expecting like it's got to be like this big like so good type of thing. You should be going in with the mindset of you're there to provide a service for other people, and that if you connect with one person, you've done your job. So I would say like the big thing would be that people should try to make sure that they always stay in that headspace of I'm trying to connect with other people, do the best I can, and then also that like their only real competition is comparing themselves with where they were at with it yesterday. It's a little easy to get lost in the noise, I'd say. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to get lost in the noise of like comparison, especially with social media, people comparing themselves to other bands or comparing themselves to oh I screwed up this note or I did better at this show. It's better to really like I'd say be self critical and look for inspiration in others as opposed to going in with another mindset that you see a lot of musicians get caught in where they're constantly in a state of they're almost in a state of competition without realizing it where they take that too far where instead of allowing other people to inspire them they get a little resentful or something or on the other hand um, really like they get a little too focused on well why haven't I made it yet and I'd say established that would actually this long rant comes down to actually if I now that I'm really thinking about what I'm trying to say sorry it's funny sometimes the word vomit helps
All
me figure out
good.
what I'm really attempting to say. I would say determine what you consider success early and make sure it's reasonable. So if you drop one song, don't expect to blow up. You drop one song, set a goal. Like for me, like when I dropped Sail, that was my first single, and my goal was like, all right, if I hit just 250
Mm-hmm.
streams, because I'm just this guy on Long Island, I don't have a big label pushing it. If I hit 250 streams, I'll consider it a success. And then in the first day, I hit 600, and I was like, great. And now I keep going. So
I love that.
and yeah, no, it's yeah, that's really. I think that's the thing. I think the trick is really to set an attainable goal of what you determine success to be because then those numbers grow anyway like now sales like past 1,000 but it was originally like 600 so you set an attainable goal and don't worry about what other people's definition of success is otherwise that can really cripple you and screw you up.
That is actually very, very, very good advice, and I think that that is really important to set goals as well. So I'm glad that that was the piece of advice at the end of. My brain does the same thing, where like eventually I'll get there, but it happens. So Courtney, how can
Yeah.
people follow you? How can people keep up with you?
Yeah. So people can find my songs. They're on Spotify, Apple, um, Deezer, Tidal, iTunes. It's on like 150 different DSPs, digital streaming platforms. So they can find my music there. They can also find me on Instagram under Courtney G Fleming. They can find my music on YouTube if they type in Courtney Fleming, which is the artist page from TuneCore. That'll pop up. If they type in Courtney Gerard Fleming, they can find 2 live music videos of me in the studio, as well as my single releases. And then, yeah, they can find me anytime at Ohika every week, or generally, if they follow my Instagram, there's a lot of notifications about like when and where I'm playing. So I was playing at the Marriott before I went to Scotland. I played at the Marriott every Friday for like 3 weeks. Last week I was at the Links in Lagrangeville, and then at
That's awesome.
Ohika. Yeah, and I
You have
have like a
you have some really great gigs. That's awesome.
thanks. Yeah, yeah. I'm really fortunate, and I have like a gig coming up at Williston's on August 8th, and yeah, so people can follow my music basically if they wanna follow me. They can. I would definitely recommend the Instagram page under Courtney G Fleming. I have like a public figure page on Facebook under Courtney Gerard Fleming, and basically you follow me on those, and then also check out anything from Spotify, Apple, iTunes. I got 2 new songs that are going to be released shortly within the month, and I'm looking forward to it. And they're a little different than the others, so I think people will really like them. They kind of it's a little bit of variation there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sitting down with me today. And I had so much fun in this conversation. And thank you guys for tuning in at home. And make sure that you go follow Courtney. I hope you guys have an awesome day.
All right, thanks, Celia. I had a great time.